The NFL draft is quickly approaching, and in a 3-day span in late April, NFL teams can change the future of their franchise for better or worse. There's an old saying that in order to build a successful NFL team, you must build through the draft, and in today's video, we're going to break down 4 NFL teams that can't afford to miss during the 2025 draft. These are teams that are at pivotal points in their franchise's timeline, and teams that are in a position to take the next step. The Lions entered the 2023 draft in this type of situation, and absolutely nailed their draft that year as they selected Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, and Brian Branch all within the first 2 rounds. The Texans also needed to nail the 2023 draft as they were entering a new era and selected CJ Stroud and Will Anderson with 2 of the top 3 picks in the class. But not every draft goes that way for all 32 teams, not even close. And if the teams we discuss in today's video have a bad draft, well, seats will get warm and a lot of people could be out of a job. Now, a preface for this video is no teams want to miss on a draft, so don't think there's 28 teams that can completely afford to whiff on the 2025 draft, because that's not the case either. But each situation in today's video is unique, and there is a lot to break down, so without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with the Miami Dolphins. Miami finished the 2024 season with an 8-9 record and missed the playoffs for the first time in the Mike McDaniel era. It was a long year for several reasons, but I do believe that even if Tua plays all 17 games, and even if they finish 10-7 or 11-6 and make the playoffs, that it wouldn't have really mattered, because this team shows pretty regularly that they do not have what it takes to beat the best of the best in the NFL when it matters. And it's frustrating for Dolphins fans, as whether you know this or not, the last time this team won a playoff game was all the way back in the year 2000, and the average one-bedroom apartment's rent was about $542 per month. That's how long it's been since Miami won their last playoff game, and one of the biggest reasons in particular as to why the Dolphins struggled so much in 2024 when it mattered was they were not a strong team up front. And it's not a coincidence the Dolphins went from first in yards per carry in 2023, in a year where they averaged 5.1 yards per carry as a team, to 28th in a year where they averaged over a yard less per carry, as they averaged just 4.0 yards per carry in 2024. Left tackle Teron Armstead retired this offseason, and Teron Armstead was good to miss a few games per year, but he played in 15 games in 2024, and he actually played at a pretty high level. So having to replace a left tackle who played at a high level is already a difficult task in itself, but there's the rest of the offensive line that has to play better, which is a unit I admittedly have questions about, and then the Tyreek Hill situation. 2024 second-round pick Patrick Paul is slated to replace Teron Armstead, and Paul played sparingly in his rookie season at both the left and right tackle position, and there were mixed results for Paul during his rookie year. And I think expecting Paul to take a big step in year 2 is a lot to expect from a developmental tackle, and I've said before I'm not a big fan of veteran guard Liam Eichenberg. But I do want to credit the Dolphins for taking a risk and signing James Daniels this offseason to a 3-year deal. It was a relatively low-risk signing, and if it works out, then the Dolphins have a solid starting guard for an average of $8 million per year. Now, for Daniels specifically, it is worth noting he is coming off of a torn Achilles, and that obviously played a big part as to why he only received an average of $8 million per year. All of this to say that Miami's offensive line already has questions up front prior to the 2025 draft. I'm also not the biggest Austin Jackson fan either, and I think it's more than reasonable to say the Dolphins should try and address the offensive line early and often within the 2025 draft. Unfortunately, I think Will Campbell is too talented to fall to pick 13, but there is a real possibility that either Josh Simmons from Ohio State or Kelvin Banks from Texas are there, both of whom I think would upgrade the offensive line, and both of whom I think would be longtime starters too. But why this draft in particular is so important for the Dolphins is they just signed Tua to an extension, and there's some questions about the culture already within the Dolphins locker room, and that's not good, especially when their GM is, or at least should be, on the hot seat, as again, they have not won a playoff game in nearly a quarter of a century. They're also in a division with the Josh Allen-led Bills, who of course aren't going anywhere, and the Drake May Patriots, who appear to be on the rise. Miami has finished second in the AFC East for 3 consecutive years, and their way to trying to dethrone the Bills and winning the AFC East starts in the trenches, and it starts with a successful 2025 NFL draft. Next up is the Chicago Bears, who are coming off of a 5-12 season, and they're in an interesting position because this isn't just the first time that they drafted a quarterback in the first round and proceeded to fire the head coach and GM the following year, or in Matt Eberflus's case, the first time in franchise history in which they fired a coach during the middle of the season. But this is the third consecutive time they've done that, whether it was with Mitch back in 2017 or with Justin Fields in 2021. Caleb Williams is the next quarterback to have to go through what each of his predecessors did. But Caleb Williams was a better prospect than both Mitch and Justin were when they came out of North Carolina and Ohio State. So they're in a pretty tricky situation because they are in a situation with their quarterback that they have to produce this year and they have to be better because ultimately this is a franchise that has made the playoffs twice since 2011 and they exited the wild card round both times. One was due to a double doink and one was in a game in New Orleans where they didn't really stand a chance to begin with, although it is worth noting that Mitch Trubisky took home the MVP of that game. Now, the Bears are in an interesting situation because for the first time in a while, they have a great head coaching candidate. This isn't just a Matt Eberflus going into Justin Fields' second season that the fans have to do a lot of alley-oops and jumps and hoops to go through to convince themselves that he's the guy. This is the head coaching candidate that multiple teams sought after, and he was the most sought after head coach in a couple of off seasons. He turned down Washington, he turned down Jacksonville to coach the Chicago Bears, and that is encouraging for Bears fans to really buy in entering the 2025 season, especially when you have Rome Odunze, who was the number 9 overall pick last year, and DJ Moore, and of course Caleb Williams, who in my opinion was the best quarterback prospect since Trevor Lawrence back in 2021, and the second best quarterback prospect in the past 10 years. These are all signs of encouragement, but unfortunately, Caleb was sacked 68 times as a rookie, and there were times where he was beat and battered around during his rookie season, and you could see the frustration from Caleb, and rightfully so at times, might I add. Now, just because he was sacked 68 times does not mean every single one of those sacks was on the offensive line. Caleb himself has to be better, but so did the offensive line, and the Bears addressed the O-line in a big way this offseason by trading for Joe Thuney, by signing Drew Dahlman in free agency, and also trading for Jonah Jackson. And I liked all of these moves because they are trying to do everything they can in their power to give Caleb Williams a chance to succeed. This draft isn't just important for the future of Caleb Williams and ultimately his confidence as he grows in the NFL, but it's also important for Ben Johnson to lay the foundation of the roster that he wants to build for 2025 and beyond too. We saw everything that he played a part in over the past couple of years in the Motor City, whether it was Jahmyr Gibbs having a 1,900 total yard season in 2024, which at the time the Lions received a tremendous amount of criticism for selecting him number 12 overall, and also left hand up. I love the pick when it was made, and they also drafted Sam Laporta in the second round of the 2023 draft. Left hand up, I did not like that selection as I thought they should have drafted Michael Mayer over Sam Laporta, which I was admittedly wrong on looking back. But we've seen everything that Ben Johnson did over the past couple of years, whether it was both of those guys in the 23 class, whether it was Amon-Ra becoming an All-Pro, whether it was Jamison Williams becoming a 1,000-yard year and overcoming adversity that he had to go through, or whether it was having Jared Goff as a top 5 MVP candidate and throwing for 37 touchdowns en route to winning 15 games as a starting quarterback in the NFL. This is a pivotal draft for the Bears for the future of the franchise, and Caleb Williams, like any young quarterback or even old quarterback for that matter, could use a good run game, and I think the Bears did a tremendous job in free agency to not only help pass protect better than what they did in 2024, because at times Caleb did not stand a chance, but also for him to be able to relax and be able to hand the ball off to a guy like Omarion Hampton if he's available at number 10, because I'll be honest, I don't think Ashton Jeanty will be available at number 10, because I think he's going number 6 to the Raiders. But for the Bears to be able to draft a running back early, or to draft another edge rusher to pair opposite of Montez Sweat, and to really to be able to set the tone and establish the team they want to be for 2025 and beyond is absolutely critical in the 2025 draft. They have 3 selections in the top 41 due to the Bryce Young trade a couple of years ago, and the Bears, I know we hear this a lot that they're offseason champions, but they can really set the tone with the 2025 draft, and for the first time in a couple of years, I legitimately believe in this coaching staff. I was always a foot half out the door with Matt Eberflus entering the 2024 season because there were a lot of rumors about him already being fired after the 2023 season, and anytime there's rumors about a coach being fired before the season starts, I'm always hesitant to buy in because of everything we know that's already swirling around the team before the games are even played. I know this may seem hard to believe, but there is a legitimate opportunity for this team to go from 5-12 like they were in 2024 to nailing each of their top 3 selections in the top 41 of the 2025 draft, and having Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson be a good quarterback and head coach duo to winning 9, 10, 12, 13 games over the next couple of seasons. But ultimately, it starts with the 2025 draft. Next up is the Carolina Panthers, and they make today's video for a couple of reasons. The big story with the Panthers entering the 2025 offseason was how they ended their 2024 season compared to how it started. They were outscored 73-13 in the first 2 games of the 2024 season, and they didn't look like a bad football team. They looked like one of the worst teams over the past 5 to 10 years. Bryce Young was benched after a 26-3 Week 2 loss to the Chargers, and 14-year veteran Andy Dalton came in and led the offense to 36 points in a Week 3 win over the Raiders. Bryce Young eventually became the starter again, and the time on the bench proved valuable. And in the final 10 games of the year, the Panthers had a 4-6 record, and Young had 20 total touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. And where the Panthers are today is a position that they seemingly never thought they would be in after just 2 games were played to start the 24 season. And for how good of an end of the year that it was for Carolina, they still need to improve the roster if they want Bryce to take a bigger step in 2025, and for him to solidify himself as the Panthers franchise quarterback. This team has just 3 selections in the top 100, as they have their own first round pick at pick 8, the Rams second round pick at 57, and their own third round pick at pick 74. They do not have their second round pick this year because of the Bryce Young trade. This team is in an interesting situation because their defense last year wasn't just below average or bottom 5. No, it was horrific, and when you factor in just how bad their defense was in 2024, along with a not great receiving core entering a put-up or shut-up season for Bryce Young, this is why the Panthers can't miss in the 2025 draft. The Panthers' leader in sacks last year was a tie between A'Shawn Robinson and Jadeveon Clowney, and neither player was particularly great last year, and even despite adding guys in free agency to try and help both the pass rush and run defense, like Tershawn Wharton, Bobby Brown, and Patrick Jones, they still lack a true alpha pass rusher that could consistently be a double-digit sack player. And whenever we do mock drafts, there's a reason that I've mocked Marshall edge Mike Green to the Panthers, not just once, but multiple times. And it's because a great edge rushing prospect would be going to a team that had one of the worst defenses we've seen over the past several years in 2024. And while Mike Green would obviously be a great addition to the Panthers, so would Arizona receiver Tetairoa McMillan. I am a huge Tetairoa McMillan believer, and I think he is one of the most overthought prospects in the entire 2025 draft, and I absolutely love the idea of pairing T-Mac with Bryce Young and having that be a quarterback and receiving duo in the Queen City for hopefully the next several years. Why this draft is also critical to the Panthers is head coach Dave Canales and general manager Dan Morgan are both entering year 2, and obviously the defense is important, nobody is denying that, and especially the pass rush in today's era, but you're also in a very critical situation with your quarterback whose future at this point is hopeful, but by no means is there guaranteed success. Entering the 2025 offseason, that is one thing that I think gets kind of forgotten about, or at least not discussed as much as it should, is some people legitimately think Bryce Young is here to stay, and that the 10-game stretch we saw to end the 2024 season is his floor as a player moving forward. And while I hope that is the case, nothing is guaranteed, and whether the Panthers choose to go receiver or edge with their first round pick, for the sake of their hopeful franchise quarterback, head coach, and GM, this draft is absolutely crucial for the Carolina Panthers. Next up is the New England Patriots, and they're in today's video for a couple of reasons that are very similar to the Chicago Bears. Rather than playing in the NFC North, they play in the AFC East, and instead of getting to play the Lions, Vikings, and Packers, they get to look up and know that they play the Josh Allen-led Bills for the next several years, which is pretty unfortunate because Josh will be just 29 years old in May, and he just signed an extension to stay in Buffalo for the next several years. The Patriots' offseason game plan entering every offseason should be pretty simple. How do we get good enough to the point where we can go into Buffalo and win when it matters? And by the way, I know the Patriots had a rough 2024 season, but I do at least want to credit the Patriots for having as tough of a season as they did and legitimately giving the Bills a game late in the year. I think that's a confidence booster for the Patriots moving forward, but one thing that I do not have confidence in them long term is the current left side of the offensive line. Fedarian Lowe was a 6th round pick a couple of years ago, and he played like a 6th round pick. Layden Robinson was a 4th round pick last year, and I hope Layden Robinson can develop a little bit, but unfortunately during his rookie year, he also played like a 4th round pick that was expected to play significant snaps. They signed Garrett Bradbury in free agency this offseason after he was released from the Minnesota Vikings, and what I will say about Bradbury is there was a reason he was released. Good offensive linemen do not get released, and there was a reason the Vikings cut Garrett Bradbury after starting for the team for 6 seasons. Again, good offensive linemen do not get cut, and I have a lot of concerns with the Patriots offensive line prior to the 2025 draft. Ultimately, I think the Patriots' game plan in the 2025 draft is pretty simple. Draft good football players to the point where we can go in and beat Buffalo when it matters, which I don't think is going to be accomplished in one draft. Now, they can set themselves up for a lot of future success by nailing the 2025 draft, but ultimately, with where Buffalo's roster is today, I do think that even if the Patriots absolutely kill the 2025 draft, that Buffalo will still win the division in 2025, barring major injuries, of course. But if they draft Will Campbell or Armand Mabou at number 4 overall and have a long-term solution along the offensive line to plug one of the other 4 positions that's not filled by Mike and Nwanu, that is a step in the right direction. We are also at a point in the NFL where there's not going to be a bad receiving class again. Now, they're not all going to be Malik Nabers and Brian Thomas Jr. and Marvin Harrison and Rome Odunze and everybody else that was in the 2024 class, and even Ladd McConkey, and if you want to throw Brock Bowers in as a receiving prospect as well, although he is a tight end, you get the point for being an elite pass catcher. We're not going to have that type of class every single year, but the 2025 draft class is not bad at the receiver position the way people want to make it out to be. With how much emphasis is placed at the receiver position going as early as back as middle school and having those guys develop from the time they're 11 or 12 years old all the way until they're 21 or 22 years old, we are not going to have a bad receiving class again. So if the Patriots draft a receiver in the 2nd round to pair with Armand Mabou or Will Campbell in the 1st round, that is a step in the right direction. Now, I did like the Stephon Diggs signing this offseason for a couple of reasons. I don't think Diggs is necessarily going to be worth the contract that he signed, as he signed an average annual value north of $20 million per year. But when you look at the Patriots roster with where it is today, there's going to be nobody that they can't afford to pay due to the Stephon Diggs contract. And that's a lot of the time my logic for breaking down free agency signings is, can you now not pay anybody because you signed a player to a long-term contract? And that's not the case with Stephon Diggs, and only about 26 of the $60+ million were guaranteed, so I thought it was a good deal for both sides. But if you can draft a big receiver, maybe a Jaden Higgins from Iowa State, to pair with an offensive lineman in the 1st round, that is a step in the right direction. And honestly, my goal for the Patriots in the 2025 draft, or what I would like them to do, is have a draft very similar to what the Chargers did last year by drafting Joe Alt in the 1st round and Ladd McConkey in the 2nd round. The Patriots game plan is very simple. Do everything you can to improve the roster and to give Drake May a fighting chance in 2025 and beyond. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 46% of people watching are subscribed and helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.